Assalamu alaikum, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of Dr. Jeffery Lang's Master Class on the Purpose of Life. Assalamu alaikum, my friends. I'm Miraj Mohideen. Welcome to The Climb. We are talking about Dr. Jeffery Lang's whole lecture series on the purpose of life. So what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to quickly summarize everything that we've talked about so far, because we are moving on to a whole new part of the lecture. So let's take a look here and see. This right here is what he has covered so far. If you remember the first part of his talk, the first episode of this series, he talked about his journey to atheism, right? Remember, his mother was this angel, as he described her, speaking of angels, but his father was abusive. He was an alcoholic. He abused Jeffery Lang's mother. He abused the children, and Jeffery Lang was one of them. Remember, he had that horrible quote. He said, it's just an awful thing to make a boy choose between his mother and himself. Very difficult journey he had, and all of that suffering led him to finally choose atheism over a God-centered life, because he just didn't understand how could a benevolent, loving God allow suffering in the world. And we talked about this idea of theodicy, the problem of suffering. That was from the first episode, right? So then the last many episodes, I think the last 6 or 7 episodes, we dove into the story of Adam. Dr. Lang got a copy of the Qur'an and started reading the creation story and the story of Adam. This is not how it goes, he said. This is totally different than the biblical story. What is going on here? And what we extracted from that, the main 3 ideas that we abstracted from that is, well, first of all, even before those main 3 ideas, we know that God's in control. He is an all-loving God, and this is all according to plan. That being said, who are we as human beings? We abstracted from that man is given intellect. He has the capacity to choose, right? So his intellect is actually there so that he can see good and bad and choose between the two. And that choice is what is signified our readiness to enter the next phase of our life, which is this earthly dimension, where we are living on earth using our faculty of reason to choose between good and bad and to make those choices on a daily basis. So that's where we are at right now. So the last, I think, 7 episodes, this is what we've covered right now. But we still have a lot more to cover. And it's very simple in many ways, but it's quite beautiful how the mathematician in Dr. Jeffery Lang is trying to figure out this equation to life. And so what he is going to do now in this next section is he is going to start looking at these themes that he discovered in the first section, right? So we have suffering, and we have this idea of intellect and morality, this ability to reason as human beings can reason, and this concept of choice. What do these 3 have to do with each other? So, instead of me telling you about that, why don't we take a listen to Dr. Jeffery Lang.
Okay. So I was impressed. I thought this author, whom I didn't know, I thought was extremely brilliant. Because the story is entirely coherent, but it's bringing out entirely new meaning. And it's stressing some things in the human equation that I would never have normally thought of. Actually, I thought these sort of things argued against the existence of God. Here, the author was using them to say, look at these. These play a fundamental role in the purpose of life. What? Intellect. Human beings have intellect. Right. In response to the angel question, they are moral creatures, and they are subjected to evil and angelic promptings. And they have to choose between them again and again and again throughout their existence. And their growth, which the Qur'an talks about frequently, is going to depend on that. We're here to grow, as we will see. But it emphasizes choice. Human beings are creatures of choice. It also emphasizes suffering. Suffering. Hey, that's pretty nice writing. It also emphasizes suffering. Human beings are going to suffer here on earth. That's the first thing that the story mentions. Spread corruption and shed blood? Havoc, suffering, pain? Yes, these 3 things play a central role somehow, the story is saying, in our development on earth, in our very purpose of our development. These are the 3 things we've always had the most trouble grappling with, all theologies have. Why give us intellect? if it leads us often to challenge in our minds the existence of God, if we can't reconcile the existence of God with our minds, with our reason, why give us choice if we could choose to do wrong? Just make us angels. Why let us suffer so on earth? Just pop us into heaven. And here the Qur'an is telling that these play essential roles in our attaining of faith. Not only these, of course, it also mentions guidance, God's forgiveness, revelation, etc., angelic forces, satanic temptation. It mentions all these other things as well. But these three essentially really caught my attention. I never expected that these three things would be emphasized. And so as I read through the Qur'an, I looked, anytime I saw anything that seemed to relate to this, I would write down notes and underline it. And I would walk up and down in San Francisco with my pen as I'm walking, because I like to walk about 7 miles every day, and I'd be underlining. My friends would always say, "Jeff, what book are you reading?" And I would lie to them. I'd tell them, "Oh, it's a great novel or something." I didn't want them to know that I was reading the Qur'an. I think they thought I was going nuts.
Okay, so very interesting dive. Do you see the mathematician in him coming out? It's just really extraordinary to see how he thinks and how he is working so hard to make sense of what is going on here. I mean, and when I watch him, I'm amazed by him, and I'm also feel so disheartened by how little I have tried to understand the Quran the way he has. But you know what? We are doing it now. So, and think of me as his TA. I would be honored to be his TA. And he is the professor, and these talks are just kind of breaking that down. So let me explain to you what the professor is saying. When we look at these two things, in the first 7 episodes of this series that we covered, what he is pulling out of this right now, right? And he wrote this himself. I'm just going to write it again real quick here, right? He says, intellect, right? Major theme from here. Choice. And then what was the third major issue that led him to atheism? It's up here. So suffering. These are the 3 major themes. I know I spelled it. I don't know why I get so stressed out spelling in front of you guys. Suffering is only 1 R. All right, I just need to, it's performance anxiety, suffering. Now I'm questioning myself. Suffering, okay? So, these are the 3 things here that he wants to explore. And he says, look, this has something to do with my quest to find the purpose of life. That's what he is assuming. There are other themes in the Quran that he mentions and so forth, but for some reason, these 3 really stuck out to them. And specifically because these are the very 3 things that lead people away from God. And yet in the Quran, he's seeing that God is saying these are the 3 things that bring you to God. So he's like, wait a second, time out here. See, because when people get too intellectual, they can intellectualize themselves out of faith, right? They ask so many questions, and a lot of intellectuals actually leave faith because they think they know better. So how can that bring you to God when most people who use it run away from God? And from his experience, not generally speaking, but from his experience, especially from that kind of Catholic experience of his, right? Don't ask too many questions. That's what the priest said. Are you questioning God? And he said, I guess I do. I guess I'm an atheist. So intellect led him away from religion, but now the Quran is saying use your intellect. That's what he's wondering to bring him to. Choice. What about choice? Well, people choose all the time, and they choose evil all the time. So a lot of times when we exercise choice, it sends us away from God. But yet the Quran is saying you are free to choose. But the Quran is saying that choice is part of you coming towards God? That doesn't make sense either. And finally, suffering. And that's the big one. And you all say this, that's the big one. Suffering is what led Dr. Jeffery Lang to go far away from God. All the way over here. You can't even see my arrow. It's off the screen here. Let's put the arrow right there, right? Suffering led him really far away from God. And yet he's trying to figure out, how can God be mentioning intellect, choice? What can suffering do that brings you to God? Doesn't make any sense. This is where it starts getting interesting. Because what we're going to see here is in the next episode, I'm keeping this one a little bit shorter because the next episode is going to be a very deep dive into what the Quran has to say about intellect, choice, and suffering. And he's going to do a survey, like a mathematical analysis of what does the Quran have to say about intellect, choice, and suffering. Because he's trying to put this all together. And what we will see here in this Lang equation, it's not even a hypothesis in my mind, it's like a theorem. This is an equation that he is going to be drawing out. We talked about section 1, section 2. This will be section 3 that we talk about. And in the future episodes, what we're going to see is that there's going to be a section 4, a section 5. He's going to look at all of these pieces that he has analyzed and played with and trying to figure out. And that right here, God willing, is going to give him the aha moment. Oh, this right here is the purpose of life. And so what we're going to do in the next episode is we're going to do this one right here. And then after that, we will cover this session and this session. And then, God willing, in a couple of episodes, you're going to have your aha moment also. So that's what we're talking about in this episode. Next episode, again, what does the Quran have to say with intellect, choice, and suffering? I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I'm trying to keep it really brief because the next episode is starting to get really big, very heavy stuff, and I want you guys to kind of get rested so that we can dive into that also. And remember, you can always feel free to watch his entire talk. It's out there, right? You can watch it. The link is below also. But hopefully you guys will stick around because I'm going to break it down for you in a way that'll really kind of make a difference for you. You know, I myself had to watch his lecture. I've probably watched it at least 20 times to really try to wrap my head around all of it and make sure I grasped every single word that he was saying. And so I invite you to join me on this journey. Anyway, thanks so much for being a part of it. It means a lot to me that you guys are here along this journey with me, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode. It will only get better. This series with his talk, it's him, not me. It just gets better and better and better. So stick around. I will see you guys soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.